Good afternoon. This is Craig from ICT once again. And in this video, we will be going over how to update your TAOs with the FP004 programmer, as well as in the second half, going over how to run diagnostics with your FP004 programmer and your TAO as well. So we'll first get started with the items that you'll need to do the firmware update first. So you'll need your FP004 programmer attached with the WELL RF303 harness, as well as also WELL RF405. So that will be labeled with a pink tag V7E TAO series. So that would be the one that you would use for both firmware updating as well as diagnostics. So go ahead and plug in that RF405 cable to your programmer. The two white boxes that are in line with that cable, go ahead and plug those together until they click. Plug in the RJ45 side on TAO here. Let's move this so we can see. And the other end of the smaller goes right underneath the power harness. All right. Once that's done, plug in your serial cable and go ahead and power up. I'll be using a BT5 to provide power for a TAO. Any type of bench power supply that can provide either 110 or 12, depending on your harness, or if you're just using a machine that's going into for power, that will be fine. So go ahead and provide power at this point, and you should see a green light on your FP004. As you can see, it is flashing green. That is the idle state. That is what it's going to show whenever you first power up programmer from its powered off state. If you were sent the programmer from us directly, and we will preload the firmware for your model of your choice. When you make the order, we'll ask you what model you want on there. We'll preload that. So once you do get it, to update your TAOs with a stored firmware that's on the programmer, either from one you've updated in the past or one you got from us directly, then you would just hold this side button on this until the light turns purple. I won't go over that part today. This will be more so on how to update your TAOs using a firmware that we send to you in an email, which is usually a newer version with updates. So this process will go over that. So you would need to have the programmer updating tool, which we just call the FP4DT, Frank Paul number 4 David Thomas, and that looks like this. So you'll see a few options in the dropdown, a bill acceptor, the second dropdown for model, the programmer that you're using, and the COM port that you're using under Windows. So since we are going to be updating TAO series, you just click down in this box. Everything should be in alphabetical order, and find TAO series for PIC 33. PIC 33 is essentially the CPU that's used inside of the TAOs. Once you select the TAO series, pick 133, you would click on the load file button and select the hex file that we sent to you by an email. You may have also received a PDF file. That will be the dip switch guide to let you know what all the switches do in this new firmware version. But since we're updating the firmware, we just want to double click on the hex file. That will essentially preload this address bar to where it's located on your computer. Once that is populated, then you can go just double check that your TAO is still in idle mode and all your cables are plugged in as appropriate. You go back to the tool and say download to device. The bars in here will start incrementing slowly. The light on your FP004 will turn to a solid bluish purple almost. It kind of depends on the way that you look at it at the angle. So this firmware update process takes about 2 minutes or so. So we'll just have this go process here. Now, when you are going to be doing diagnostics, you will need to power your FP004 externally. So with a 12-volt power supply that you would just plug into your wall, like a 110 to 12, anything around 2 amps is sufficient. And I will go over the reason for that once we get to the diagnostic section of this video. Unfortunately, without it being externally powered, you will not be able to successfully complete the diagnostics. So it will give you an error, and I will demonstrate both of those ways shortly. Once all the bars reach 100%, that lets you know that programming has succeeded. Your TAO will also power cycle, and you'll get a message at the bottom indicating programming succeeded. So that once your TAO restarts and power cycles, you will be on the firmware version that we sent you or that you wanted to update to. In this next part of the video, we'll go over how to run diagnostics with your TAO and your FP004, since things are slightly different. Open up my TAO testing tool software. All right, so our TAO testing tool software is essentially this, this program here. For this process, however, you will need to provide power to your FP004 using the barrel connector. So that one, you just want to provide power externally, as it won't be getting power from the TAO. Back to the tool, you would select the COM port that you're running, your FP004 on your. In my example, I have COM1. You want to turn your FP004 into yellow mode by just tapping the side button twice. Turn off your TAO power supply, keeping note that the light on the programmer is still staying yellow because it's being powered externally with 12 volts. When your programmer is in yellow mode and your TAO is off, go ahead and power it up again, which will then populate values in your tool. So the system version, device version, judge version, program checksum, and standard checksum. The program checksum and standard checksum should both be identical. You can tell if you've made an error, perhaps, in this step. I will demonstrate, for example, if you do not power your programmer externally, it will list the top values correctly, but the checksum will differ between the two. All right, open that up again. I'll show you the incorrect way to do it, just so you can see what happens because of that. So in this example, you say you forget to power your programmer externally. So when the TAO is turned off, there's no lights on the programmer. When you power the programmer, it's going to be in green mode. And when you turn it off, it won't stay in the yellow mode that you set it to if it's not externally powered. So even if you set it to yellow mode, and you go back to the tool and say choose COM and power cycle your TAO, which it will turn off the light on your programmer. And then when you repower your TAO, it'll go back to green and give you some values in your tool. However, the program checksum and the standard checksum are not going to be correct. This will cause errors in the test tool and not allow you to proceed and test correctly. The process may be similar, but the values that are stored for calibration and things like that will not be correct, and that won't work. So once again, externally power your TAO with 12 volts and the FP004. As soon as you apply external power, it will power cycle the TAO, just because you're plugging in a externally powered programmer. Have that set to the yellow mode. with the TAO turned off, but the programmer externally powered, it is still in the yellow mode. Still in that yellow mode, go ahead and apply power again to your TAO. And you'll see now that the program and the standard checksums are identical, letting you know that it has successfully connected with the TAO and everything has been done correctly. So to proceed through this test, you would essentially copy both boxes for each section from the top to the bottom. When I personally do my testing, I disable the dip switch test. That is probably the most lengthy test that you would go back and do if something else wasn't acting correctly. So say, for example, you have the switch enabled to not take 50s or 100s, but when it is turned on visibly, it's not rejecting those bills. So that's when you actually go through and do the dip switch test, where it's going to actually ask you to turn off every single switch on the unit and go through literally one by one, turning it off and on to register the change in the software. If the switch is damaged, then it's not going to register that change, and it will provide you with an error to let you know, like, hey, this switch bank is possibly not good. But for just normal everyday testing, you can just remove the check mark from the number 9 dip switch test and proceed with the diagnostics from here. You will need a TAO calibration card as part of this diagnostic process. Step number 4 will ask you for calibration. If you don't have this card, you can turn off the calibration test. But it's advised that if you don't have a calibration card, to get one and perform calibrations in time that you clean the bill path, and there's any problems with debris or anything like that, to clean that and then do a recalibration on the fresh, clean bill area to help improve any false rejections or anything of that nature. So we'll go ahead and go through one of the diagnostics for start to finish, accepting the dip switch test like I mentioned. So with all of your fields on the left copied from the top to the bottom, go ahead and click Start Test. It will run through each of these, and once it needs something from you, it will tell you at the very bottom, user interaction like required, please insert calibration card. So you would insert the calibration card by holding on to the little barcode at the bottom. That's going to be facing up as you feed. If there is any problem in your sensors, it will note them here, like LED 4 in G, overvalue, and it will let you know specifically in this text area which sensors are bad, if they are. On this unit, there are no bad sensors, so it didn't flag it. The next step says to insert any banknote. It's not actually testing money. This test is for the hook sensor. So you can just use your same calibration card to insert it. In this next test, it's going to ask if your front bezel is flashing red. answer that appropriately. If it is, hit yes or okay. If it's not, you would hit not good. So since this is flashing red, you hit okay. It will then go to the green test, which it is okay, and then to the blue test, which also is okay. Next test will stack once to test the stacker motor. After that, you'll be given a credit test. If you are just hooked into power without any type of meter hooked up, this is going to be irrelevant to you. It's essentially testing credit pulses to your meter. So under this test, if you do have a meter hooked up, it should be incrementing one credit very slowly until you hit OK. The next step after that is going to test the cache box removal sensor. So at the bottom, they'll say, please remove stacker box. So just remove the stacker box. It's going to say replace stacker box. Go ahead and replace stacker box. The last test is the PD test. That is going to be specifically for your sensor board, which is the one in the pull-out tray, not the upper board, but the one in the lower. If there's any problems in the sensor board area, you'll also be notified by a message saying, value 14 NG or value 6 warning. If you do see a warning, that means it's still technically within range, but is getting on the outer edges of it and may start leading to sensor problems in the near future. So if it's warning or NG, you would probably want to replace the sensor board on that unit that you're testing. After those tests are finished, it will provide you messages at the bottom, test finished, and your TAO will essentially have all of its lights off and be in a powered off state by software. To get it back and running again, essentially just power cycle. And it will go back into its idle rotating bezel lights when it is ready for service. Hope this video was helpful in explaining how to run diagnostics and firmware updating on your TAOs. Until next time,